Alright, guys. Who's all set? Ready to go? Cool. That is so awesome. You guys went fast. Alright, so I'm Gabe Bentz. If you guys don't know me, I'm a second year RA here at Embry-Riddle. I was gone for a year. During that year, I did all kinds of stuff. If you want to talk to me about that kind of stuff, I can do that later. But basically, what I learned how to do was to get about 10 things done in like no time. So I'm going to try to share some of those, that basic one trick actually, here and more for a minute. So, I got to get my computer. Here we go. Okay. So, what this presentation is not. This is not a time management presentation as most of you would normally expect in something. If you went to one previously or something, we did a lot of like organizing a calendar and getting your to-do list set up and that kind of stuff. This is not what we're doing here. What I'm going to show you is a new kind of a way of looking at time and setting up your time in a way so that you don't have to use the calendar so much. What I want to do with this is create a new way of thinking about time itself and what you do within it. It's very deep. It sounds very deep right there. It's really not. But what I want us to do is, the reason I didn't want to do time management or planning is because planning is great, but it really doesn't matter until some action is taken at some point. I mean, you can plan yourself to death, and the greatest ideas have all been lost because people were planning all the time. And quite honestly, the only reason this nation exists today is because of people who were able to take action. I could tell you right now that the Civil War would have been lost had a man not taken action at a particular time at Gettysburg. I'll actually tell that story right now. I've got time. This is important because this is more important almost than what I'm going to say. It's the importance of taking action over planning your time all the time. At Gettysburg, there was a young gentleman, a colonel named Joshua Chamberlain, who about a year before had been a school teacher. He was at Gettysburg. He had about 80 men on top of the school hill outside of in the middle of Gettysburg. There were two Yankees on this side, a whole bunch of Southerners on the other side. Southerners. My presentation. But what happened was he had originally started with about 300 men. By this point of the day, he was down to 80 men. They were out of ammunition. They'd already stripped the dead for any kind of ammunition they had. They were completely dry. There was nothing left. The Confederates were reinforcing on the other side and just about to come on to them. At that point, Chamberlain was having to figure out what he was going to do. Is he going to retreat? Is he going to stay there? Is he going to do something else? So on and so forth. Eventually, the Confederates did start attacking them. And they continually were trying to figure out what was going on. And it was a lose-lose situation. If they were retreated, they were going to die. If they attacked, they had nothing to attack with. They were going to die. But what Chamberlain decided to do is he was saying, well, we can stand here and continue to think about it. Or he'd say, well, what the heck? He pulled out his sword and he just yelled charge and started running down the hill. And his 80 men followed him. What resulted from that was that the Confederates thought that they had suddenly been reinforced somehow on that hill and that 1,000 Yankees were coming towards them as fast as they could. And by taking that simple action of having 80 unarmed guys just go do it, they were able to hold that line so that the Confederates couldn't break through the Yankee lines and actually win Gettysburg, and there'd be more dead bodies there than there are already. But he had nothing but by the end of that day, his 80 unarmed men had captured 400 soldiers and turned the tide of the war. So it's up to his single decision to not just sit there continually thinking about what he's going to do, but actually just do something. I mean, even the wrong thing is better than nothing very often. So that's why I kind of moved away from just the planning of it, because planning is not a productive system if you get into it too far. If you spend too much of your time planning out your time, you're not doing anything. So that's why I moved away from it. So, to get started here, when we're working at time and setting up what we're going to do, how do we normally think about time? Well, we usually think of it as something very straight and constant, something immutable, something like a ruler, something that's set up into normal minutes, days, months, years, measured out. Each one of us has an invisible clock above our heads ticking down. We don't know how much time we have. We might be at this part of our time. We might be at this part of our time. We don't know. So we see it as something that is untouchable, immutable, and even science says it's immutable. And I agree with that. It's true. Kind of. Time is basically immutable. And so when we look at it that way, as a straight line that continually goes on and we can't change it or affect it, then we try to adjust ourselves to it by filling up the time with the things that we have to do. Our tasks, the things we have to do each day, so on and so forth. And what we typically do is, since we're looking at time as a measured system, we say, well, that task I'm going to expect is going to take about this much of the system, and then the next task is going to take that much of the system, and you continually go from one task to the next. You're stepping, when this one's done, I'll start this one. This one's done, I'll start this one. So on and so forth. And you move through time in that kind of situation in a very end-to-end linear kind of fashion. The trouble with that is that you're limiting yourself, because while you cannot affect time, you can affect this part of it. So instead of thinking time as a line, you can think of it as a plane, a flat surface that continues this direction, but you can stack this direction. Now the thing is, when I show you this next slide, a bunch of you guys are going to think, well, no, hang on, I'm going to leave you there, right? I'm going to head. This is why I don't like PowerPoint. I usually don't. But when you think about this linear type of time too, you always end up screwing yourself, because this continues on, and this stuff constantly changes around you all the time. Something goes too short, you suddenly have a gap that you can't fill, you end up watching YouTube for too long. You have something that goes too long, it overruns something else. Family emergency pops up, something weird happens, and then you end up losing sleep at the end of the day because you weren't able to study for your exam long enough because you weren't ready. So thinking of time like this and letting this stuff just kind of exist independent and outside of this, you create a problem for yourself. And these are all the texts that come in during the day. About every 30 seconds, I think you'll see something like that. But yes, when you let time think of it in this linear fashion, you are setting yourself up to fail, because an end-to-end system gives you no flexibility at all. You can kind of maybe adjust stuff back and forth, but only to a certain extent. That meeting is going to start at 3:30, no matter when this ends. You have no flexibility in that once you set up your schedule like that. And again, within the planning, if you're planning your day and you go up on Google Calendar and you say from 3:30 to here, I'm going to be doing this or whatever it is, you automatically set up a psychological block of, okay, when that's done, I'm done until the next thing happens. Or if it goes over, well, that sucks or whatever it is, it's going to finish short. So as you plan time and you use calendars and that kind of thing, you create blocks that make you use time less efficiently and create these kind of gaps and overlaps in that kind of thing. So now moving on to the next slide. What we can do, since we can't affect time itself, is stack the stuff we do within it. Now, all of you guys, when I say that, are going to say, multitask. No. Multitasking is bad. Multitasking is talking on the phone with your parents while writing a paper, while eating pizza, while watching Netflix. And that's scientifically proven over and over and over again that it screws you in every direction, however you go about it, because your focus decreases on every one of the topics, and you don't get anything done faster, and you get it all done horribly. So multitasking is not the right kind of system at looking at this. This is also not completely overlapping tasks like, well, I'm going to do laundry and be on call at the same time. That's not the same kind of thing either, because going and doing laundry takes 5 minutes, and then you wait. That's a new block of time that just opened up. That's not overlapping a task. It kind of is, but really it isn't, because you're not doing multiple things at the same time. What I want you guys to get out of this is figure out a way to ultra-task. Yeah. This was the only prefix I could think of that worked. But in ultra-tasking, you figure out how to do one single thing, but then you figure out how to accomplish multiple things in that single action. It's stacking specific tasks or goals into something that you're doing so that you get more out of what you were doing. And an example I use of this is a project that I started last semester. It's a great example. I'm an engineer here at this school. The typical knowledge in engineering for the students is that if you want to be successful in a class, if you want to get a perfect A, you have to work like 10 problems every night forever, the whole semester, and then you might be ready for the exam. If you're really ambitious, you work like 15. Each one of those takes like 45 minutes. You don't sleep after something like that. But first of all, it's not that bad. But the basic idea is having to work problems to get something done. I personally hate that a lot because I hate nothing more than having to do someone else's work again and realize that there's about a billion other kids out there who's working that exact same problem again. We have just killed, if the problem took an hour, we've just killed 15 billion hours of time or something like that. Because there was absolutely nothing gained from that except some knowledge. And knowledge is not tangible enough for me. I need some more result that's more personal or more active in the world. But I have to work problems in order to learn it, and I paid a lot of money to eventually learn this stuff. So I figured I should do that. But at the same time, there were a couple other projects that I was working on. One of them was I wanted to create a YouTube channel. So I was like, oh, what am I going to do with this? Whatever it is. I mean, I've got a webcam sitting around or something. I want to use it. I also realized, well, just about every day that I sit in the library, somebody comes and asks me for help on this exact same problem. And I help about 3 people on this problem every day or whatever it is or something like that. And that just is one of those little yellow niches that shows up in my day that breaks up something I was trying to do, but it starts to add up. I add like 2 or 3 hours onto my day helping people. I also add 2 to 3 hours on my day in the future sometime working on a separate YouTube channel, and I have to work problems all the time. And I realized that while these are separate tasks, they could all be completed in one fell swoop in a couple hours a night or something like that. So I started a YouTube channel. It's called Relectures, what I called it. And what I do is I do my homework and I film it. And that's all it is. It's not any extra work. What I've simply done is thinking of time as something a little bit more flexible. Thanks, Paul, for this problem. But if the time is this wide, and I've got to help people here somewhere, I got to make a YouTube channel, and I got to do my homework, I can just pluck that hour out of the future, pluck this hour out of the future over here, stack them on right here. I still have the same amount of time, but the tasks have all been stacked into the basket. So that's basically how to look at that. You have to re-look at your to-do list, and instead of staring at it and saying, where can I fit this into my calendar, stare at it and say, how can these things merge into single tasks? Not a stack of multiple separate tasks, but merge into a single task. And I did that with Relecture. I do my homework every night. I film it with my camera. It adds 5 minutes to set the camera up each night. And now I have like 15,000 views on YouTube after a semester. So that was a fairly useful bit of time. And if you want to extend onto that even further, the fact that each one of those videos is like 10 to 15 minutes long, and I've had 15,000 people watch them, I've just made my time worth 15 minutes times 15,000. So I've turned like 50 hours of work in a semester, and I've made it worth several hundred hours teaching people something. So if you want to create time as more of a resource or an investment that you can grow and move around and something like that, by using the tasks that you're doing within it, then you can actually get something productive done and get more done than what you're doing. All right. Talk about that already. Yeah. So where is this kind of thing applicable? Well, it's fairly obvious where it's applicable and that kind of thing. I mean, you have to look at it in your own individual circumstance all the time to figure out how it's going to work. In the RA job, you may say, well, I'm going to be on call and I'm going to do my laundry at the same kind of thing. But if you want to take that back even further, you can say, I really want to make friends with Dr. Ayers. But I have an RA program to do. Hey, I could introduce Dr. Ayers to all my residents at a program, and he would totally be down for that. And you have just built a very strong connection with Dr. Ayers because you've shown your importance to the residents in doing so. You get to talk to him, you get to introduce him to all these kids and talk to them while you're doing that, and then you get a program done. Bam. 2 life goals finished in a night, as opposed to trying to figure out some way to get into Dr. Ayers just in general. But using those in, figuring out how you can combine those things, it takes some imagination, and it takes a little bit of effort to get used to this kind of stuff. But it is something that you can do, and do often with all kinds of things. All right. Why? Well, again, the why is pretty obvious. You're taking something from the future or something from somewhere else, and figuring out how to stack it up so that your time is not just a linear progression that you live and exist in, but something that you can actually stack and get more out of all the time. Increase your time. Get more from the minute. Turn the 1 minute of making a video or doing your homework into several hours of teaching people something about engineering or something like that. There's also another proven kind of psychological benefit of this kind of stuff. When you look at your life and your tasks in this kind of a way of take that from the future, bring it back here, combine these things. If you look at it in the RA job and you go from like social time to work, if the RA job is a job and then you go have fun or something like that, that's almost an unhealthy relationship. If you cannot have those things combine and coexist, then you create an unhealthy lifestyle. That was a bad statement there. I'd use that word. But it helps you create goals and life goals that you can combine and work into your everyday life. And in doing this, if you're working hard enough to combine these kind of things in different kind of ways, what you do is you can take your life goals. I want to be an engineer. And you're able to weave it into everything that you do all the time. If you're continually thinking about how can I combine what I'm doing with something that I want to do or something that I have to do. I want to become an engineer. How can I make that a part of everything that I do every day? And you accomplish far more all the time doing whatever you're doing. Okay. I think I can. Future idea. Okay. Any questions? Anything you guys want to talk about? I'm going to make